When Maya accidentally opened a playlist she hadn't touched in 5 years, her heart stopped. It was created by the man who broke her heart, the one who said she was just a distraction from his real life. But he'd been adding songs to it every single day since their breakup. 1,125 songs for 1,125 days without her. The most recent song was uploaded yesterday at 3:47 in the morning. Then she saw the notification that made everything change. Julian Sterling is currently listening to this playlist. Hello, beautiful Pride family. Welcome back to another enriching story. Your unwavering support means the world to me, and I'm committed to bringing you even more heartwarming stories as I continue to grow and evolve every day. If you're joining us for the first time today, please drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to officially become part of our Pride family. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's captivating story. Maya Thorne had always believed that heartbreak had an expiration date, that 5 years was more than enough time to purge a man from your system, to stop seeing his face in crowds, to stop measuring every new possibility against the ghost of what you once had. She was wrong. It was a Thursday night in late October when her carefully constructed immunity shattered. The rain hammered against the single window of her studio apartment in Brooklyn, the kind of relentless downpour that made the whole city smell like wet concrete and regret. She'd worked a double shift at the cafe. Her feet ached, her hands smelled like coffee grounds and cleaning solution, and she'd received her third rejection email from a Manhattan gallery that week. The message had been brief, clinical, devastating in its politeness. Your work doesn't align with our current vision. We wish you the best in your artistic endeavors. She was 28 years old, still struggling, still fighting for a dream that seemed to slip further away with each passing year. The bottle of wine she'd bought at the corner store, cheap red that would probably give her a headache, sat open on her thrift store coffee table. She'd already poured her second glass, and it was the 5-year anniversary. 5 years to the day since Julian Sterling had looked at her with those storm-gray eyes and told her she was a distraction he couldn't afford, that their 6 months together had been a beautiful mistake, that she didn't belong in his world. 5 years since the only man who'd ever made her feel truly alive had walked out of her life like she was nothing. Maya pulled her silk bonnet tighter over her braids, wrapped herself in the oversized blanket that lived permanently on her couch, and reached for her phone. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Comfort, maybe. Or distraction. Anything to stop the spiral of memories threatening to pull her under. She opened Spotify, intending to play her usual playlist, the one filled with angry breakup anthems and songs about independence and not needing anyone. Her thumbs slipped. She accidentally clicked on a different playlist, one buried deep in her library, one she hadn't looked at in 5 years. For When You Miss Me. Her heart stopped, actually stopped, then started again with a painful lurch that made her press her hand to her chest. She should have deleted this years ago. Should have purged it along with his photos and his text messages and the vintage t-shirt of his she'd stolen and finally thrown away 3 years into her healing. But somehow this playlist had survived, buried and forgotten in the digital graveyard of their relationship. The cover image was still the photo Julian had chosen, a blurry picture of their hands intertwined, her brown fingers laced through his pale ones, taken on some lazy Sunday morning when the world had felt infinite and kind. She could almost feel the texture of that moment, the warmth of his bed, the sound of rain so similar to tonight. The way he'd kissed her knuckles and told her she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Stop, Maya told herself. Stop doing this. But she was already scrolling through the songs, the Rihanna track from their first night together when she'd been performing at an open mic in the Village, and he'd been in the audience watching her like she was the only person in the room. The jazz instrumental he used to play on his vintage record player, the one that skipped in the same place every time. And he'd never fixed it because he said the imperfection made it real. The acoustic version of her own song, the one she'd written for him at 3 in the morning and played while he listened with his eyes closed, and something that looked like pain and wonder on his face. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry over Julian Sterling again. She'd cried enough tears to fill a river. She was done. Then she kept scrolling and froze. New songs, dozens of them, hundreds, all added after their breakup. Her hand started shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. She checked the dates, her breath coming shorter with each swipe. Songs added 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all the way back to the week after he'd ended things. A mournful ballad about losing something precious, dated 5 days after he'd walked away. This wasn't possible. This playlist was supposed to be a relic, a preserved moment in time from when they'd been together. But Julian had kept adding to it for 5 years. The most recent song made her whole body go cold. Uploaded yesterday at 3:47 in the morning. A haunting ballad about regret and second chances. The kind of song you listened to when you couldn't sleep, when the weight of your mistakes pressed down on your chest until you couldn't breathe. Her fingers trembled as she clicked on the playlist description, something she'd never paid attention to before. The words on the screen made the room tilt. 125 songs for 125 days without you. I'm sorry, Maya. I've always been sorry. A song for every single day they'd been apart. The wine glass slipped from her other hand, red liquid spreading across her already stained coffee table. She didn't notice. She was counting, actually counting. Her math degree from college finally useful for something besides calculating tips. 125 days. 5 years exactly. He'd been keeping track down to the day, adding a song every single day for 5 years. The walls she'd spent 5 years building. Brick by careful brick. Therapy session by therapy session. Meditation and affirmations. And convincing herself that Julian Sterling had been nothing but a cold billionaire who'd used her as a temporary distraction from his real life. Those walls began to crack because this wasn't the behavior of a man who'd moved on. This was obsession. This was devotion. This was 5 years of silence that screamed louder than words ever could. She clicked on one of the songs from 2 years ago, a raw acoustic track about loving someone you couldn't have. Then another from 3 years ago. Then one from last month. Each one felt like a message, like he was trying to tell her something, like he'd been having a conversation with her for 5 years, and she'd never known she was part of it. Her phone buzzed with a notification banner that made her heart stop for the second time in 10 minutes. Julian Sterling is currently listening to this playlist. He was online right now at 2 in the morning on a rainy Thursday night, listening to the same song. She was listening to the same playlist that had become a 5-year archive of longing and regret. Maya stared at the notification until it disappeared, then pulled up the playlist again. The little green dot next to his profile picture confirmed it. Active now. She could see what song he was playing. The jazz instrumental. Their song. The one with the skip. Was he remembering the same mornings she was? The same moments? Was he in his penthouse alone thinking about her the way she'd spent 5 years trying not to think about him? Her chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to hope. And hope was the most terrifying thing of all. Because hope meant vulnerability. Hope meant risking the kind of pain that had nearly destroyed her 5 years ago. She scrolled to the bottom of the playlist where there was an option to add songs. Her finger hovered over it. 5 years of silence. 5 years of convincing herself she was over him, that she'd moved on, that Julian Sterling was just a beautiful mistake in her past. And yet here she was, crying on her couch at 2 in the morning, realizing with absolute crushing certainty that she'd never stopped loving him. Not for a single day. Not for a single hour. The realization broke something open inside her. She dated other men, had even tried to fall in love again, but every single one of them had been measured against Julian and found wanting. None of them had looked at her art the way he had, like it mattered, like it meant something. None of them had listened to her music with that intense focus, like every note was precious. None of them had made her feel seen, truly seen, the way he had in those 6 perfect months before everything fell apart. She noticed something else as she scrolled back through the songs more carefully. Her artist's eye caught patterns. The songs from 3 years ago were different. Darker tracks about fighting battles alone, about pain, about fear. There were songs about hospital rooms and saying goodbye and preparing for the end. What did that mean? Then there was a gap. She noticed it now. A 3-month silence about 2 years ago, where no songs had been added at all. Complete radio silence. Then they resumed, but different somehow, more hopeful, less desperate, like something fundamental had changed. What had happened to Julian Sterling in the past 5 years? What battles had he been fighting? What had he been trying to tell her through these songs? Her phone screen showed he was still active, still listening. They were connected in this moment, separated by the city but bound by the same memories, the same music, the same ache. The intimacy of it made her breath catch. This was the closest they'd been in 5 years, both of them alone in the darkness, reaching for the same pieces of their past. Before she could overthink it, before the wine courage wore off, Maya clicked Add Song. She searched for a track she knew he'd understand, an angry anthem about betrayal and moving on, and added it to the playlist. Then she watched her phone like it was a live grenade. 3 minutes passed, the longest 3 minutes of her life. Then the playlist updated. A new song appeared, a raw acoustic track about regret, about being sorry, about wanting to take back every mistake. He'd responded. After 5 years of silence, after 1,825 days of adding songs into the void, Julian had seen her addition and responded. They were communicating through music, through the only language that had ever really worked for them. They were finally having the conversation they should have had 5 years ago. Her hands shook as she added another song. Something defiant about not looking back, about being strong, about survival. He responded within 2 minutes this time, a song about unfinished love, about stories that weren't supposed to end, about finding your way back. The exchange became fevered, desperate. Her adding songs about independence and healing. Him adding songs that sounded like apologies set to music, like prayers, like a man drowning and reaching for shore. 20 songs passed between them in an hour. The sun would be up soon. She had to work in 5 hours. None of it mattered. Then the playlist updated with something that made her whole world tilt. Not a song. A voice memo. Maya stared at it for a full minute before she found the courage to click play. Then Julian's voice poured through her phone speakers, deeper than she remembered, rougher, thick with emotion, and she was 23 years old again, listening to him talk about art and music and dreams while the world stood still. Maya, I know you're listening. I know I don't deserve a response. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. But if there's any part of you that remembers what we had, any piece of your heart that hasn't completely closed to me, please meet me. Saturday night, 8 Wahua, the rooftop garden at the Bowery Hotel, where we had our first kiss. I need to see you. I need to explain. I need to... God, I just need to see your face again. Please, Maya." His voice cracked on her name, and she heard him take a shaky breath before the recording ended. She played it again and again and again, listening not just to the words, but to what lived beneath them. Exhaustion, loneliness, a kind of bone-deep weariness that spoke to years of suffering. This wasn't a man who'd forgotten about her and moved on. This was a man who'd been carrying the weight of their ending every single day. She could hear it in every syllable. The smart thing would be to ignore this, to protect herself, to remember that Julian Sterling had walked away once and could do it again. But when had she ever been smart where he was concerned? Friday passed in a blur. She called Cassidy, her best friend since college, the one who'd held her through the worst of the breakup, who'd kept her from calling Julian 1,000 times in those first devastating months. Cassidy came over with coffee and breakfast sandwiches and found Maya still on the couch, still in her sleep clothes, phone clutched in her hand with the playlist on the screen. "Girl, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya handed over her phone without a word, watched Cassidy's eyes widen as she scrolled through the playlist, as she read the description, as she listened to the voice memo. "Oh, hell no," Cassidy said, but her voice was gentler than her words. "Maya, you cannot be seriously considering this. He added a song every day for 5 years, Cassidy. Every single day." "Okay. And so what? You know what Julian Sterling is now? He's not the guy you dated. He's a billionaire worth over $8 billion. I looked him up last night when I couldn't sleep. Been reading about him for hours. He's known for being reclusive, absolutely ruthless in business. There are articles about how cold he is, how he destroyed 3 competitors last year without breaking a sweat. He hasn't been photographed with a woman in years. The man's built walls so high nobody can reach him." "Maybe that's why he's been adding songs to a playlist," Maya said quietly. "Maybe he's been just as alone as I have." Cassidy sat down next to her, took her hand. "What do you want to do, really?" Maya closed her eyes. The honest answer terrified her. "I want to see him again. I want to know why. I just want to see him." "If that's what you really want, then go, but promise me something. Promise me you'll protect your heart this time. Don't let him destroy you again." But even as Cassidy said it, even as Maya promised, they both knew it was too late. Her heart had never stopped being his. Saturday arrived with cruel perfection, one of those October evenings when the city glowed gold and the air felt full of possibility. Maya told herself 50 times she wasn't going. Told herself while she showered, while she stood in front of her tiny closet, while she pulled out the black silk dress she'd been saving for something special. The one that made her skin glow and hugged her curves in a way that made her feel powerful and beautiful. She told herself she wasn't going while doing her makeup, taking extra time with her eyes, while taking down her braids, and letting her natural hair fall in soft waves around her shoulders, while putting on the perfume she'd worn 5 years ago, the one he'd loved, the one that used to make him bury his face in her neck and breathe her in like she was oxygen. At 7:45, she was standing on the street corner wearing her most beautiful dress and heels that made her legs look endless, telling herself she could still turn around and go home. At 7:50, she was in an Uber heading to the Bowery Hotel, watching the city blur past, her heart beating so hard she pressed her hand to her chest to make sure it didn't escape. The hotel was exactly as she remembered, all understated elegance and old New York charm. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt eternal. She watched the numbers climb, each floor bringing her closer to a moment that would either heal her or break her all over again. Her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman who looked far more composed than she felt. The dress had been the right choice. She looked good, strong, like someone who'd survived and thrived, even if the truth was far more complicated. The elevator doors opened, and Maya stepped into a dream. Or maybe a memory? She couldn't tell anymore. The rooftop garden had been completely transformed, closed to the public. Fairy lights strung between potted trees created a canopy of stars. Candles covered every surface, their flames dancing in the gentle breeze. A string quartet played softly in the corner, something classical and achingly beautiful. And there, standing by the edge, with the glittering Manhattan skyline behind him, backlit by the setting sun, was Julian Sterling. Her breath left her body in a rush. He was devastating, taller than she'd remembered, 6'3" of lean muscle in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Broader in the shoulders. His dark hair was slightly longer, touching his collar in a way that made her fingers itch to touch it. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and those eyes. Those storm-gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for 5 years, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place. But there was something different about him, too. A hardness that hadn't been there before. Like he'd been carved from marble. Like he'd forgotten how to be soft. Deep shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. And beneath the carefully controlled exterior, something that looked almost fragile, like he was holding himself together through sheer force of will. The air between them crackled with 5 years of longing, anger, unresolved passion, and desperate hope. Julian hadn't moved since the elevator doors opened, hadn't looked away from her face. He was staring at her like she was a miracle, like he couldn't quite believe she was real, like if he blinked, she might disappear. Maya forced her legs to move, forced herself to walk toward him, even though every step felt like walking through fire. She stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance because if she got too close, she'd either slap him or kiss him, and she genuinely didn't know which would happen first. "You have 5 minutes," she said, and was proud that her voice came out steady. 5 minutes to explain, to say whatever you need to say." Julian's carefully constructed composure cracked immediately. His voice when he spoke was rough, raw, nothing like the controlled billionaire CEO the world saw. "You came. I wasn't sure. I hoped. But I didn't let myself believe you would. 4 minutes and 30 seconds now." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "You're so beautiful, even more than I remembered. I've tried to remember exactly what you looked like, but my memory didn't do you justice. You're radiant, more powerful, more everything." "Stop, please." Maya cut him off, her voice shaking now with anger and hurt bubbling up after 5 years of suppression. "Did you call me out just to stand there and give me pretty words? You ended it, Julian. You looked me in the eyes and told me I was a distraction from your real life, that I didn't fit into your world, that what we had was a beautiful mistake. So what is this? Nostalgia? Are you bored? Is the great Julian Sterling looking for entertainment?" "No." The word came out harsh, almost desperate. He took a step closer, and she caught his scent. The same cologne after all these years, and the familiarity of it crashed over her like a wave. "No, Maya, I lied about all of it." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "Well, that makes me feel so much better. I lied because I'm a coward. I lied because ending things with you was the biggest mistake of my life, and I've spent every single day since trying to find a way back to you." His voice cracked, and he stopped, took a breath. "I destroyed the only real thing I've ever had because I was too broken, too scared to hold on to it." The raw honesty in his voice made her walls shake. "If you felt that way, why didn't you just call, text, anything? Why 5 years of silence? Because I didn't think you'd ever forgive me." Julian's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and Maya had never seen him cry, not once in their 6 months together. "I didn't think I deserved forgiveness. The playlist was all I could manage. A pathetic, silent apology stretched across 5 years. One song for every day without you because I couldn't stop counting. Couldn't stop marking time by your absence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. And again, he ignored it completely, eyes never leaving her face. She caught a glimpse when he silenced it. Multiple missed calls from a name that made her heart skip. Dr. Elena Vance. A doctor? Why was a doctor calling him repeatedly on a Saturday night? Julian, she started, concern bleeding through her anger. Who is that? Who keeps calling you? It's nothing, he said too quickly. Just business. That's a lie. Try again. Before he could answer, the string quartet shifted into a new song, and Maya's heart nearly stopped for the third time that night. Their song, the jazz instrumental from his record player, the one with the skip. He'd arranged for them to play their song. Julian extended his hand, palm up, and his voice was barely a whisper. Dance with me, please, just one song. This was a mistake. She knew it with absolute certainty, knew that taking his hand would undo all the healing, would bring down every wall she'd built. But she did it anyway. Let her palm slide against his, and gasped at the electricity that shot through her entire body at the contact. His hand closed around hers like she was precious, like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. They moved together, and it was like no time had passed at all. His other hand settled on her waist, burning through the silk of her dress. Her free hand came up to his shoulder. They swayed slowly to the music, not really dancing, just holding each other. And Maya felt her resolve crumbling with every second. Why did you really end it? She asked against his chest, her head somehow having found its way to rest there, his heart thundering beneath her ear. What were you protecting me from? Julian tensed against her, every muscle going rigid. My father, the company. There were things happening I couldn't control, situations spiraling that I couldn't let touch you. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping you safe from the darkness of my world. Maya pulled back to look at him, and her eyes were blazing. You didn't protect me. You made the choice for both of us. Decided I was too fragile, too weak to handle your life. That's not protection, Julian. That's control. That's arrogance. He flinched like she'd struck him, actual pain crossing his face. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was arrogant and stupid and convinced myself you'd move on, find someone better, someone who could give you a normal life, someone who deserved you. And what were you going to do? Maya's voice broke, tears finally spilling over. Just torture yourself with a playlist forever. Add songs and pretend that was enough. Yes, Julian said simply, and the honesty of it stole her breath. The playlist was all I had left of you, all I allowed myself to have. Every song was a conversation I couldn't have. Every lyric was something I needed to say, but didn't have the courage to. I'd listen to it and pretend you could hear me. Pretend you knew that not a single day passed where I didn't think about you, miss you, love you. The song ended, but they didn't separate. They stood inches apart, his hands still on her waist, her hands still in his. Both of them breathing hard like they'd run a marathon instead of swaying to music. Julian's eyes dropped to her lips. His voice was barely a whisper. Tell me you didn't feel it, too. Tell me the last 5 years weren't as empty for you as they were for me. Tell me you don't still feel this connection burning between us. Maya couldn't. The truth was written all over her face. I hate you for still making me feel this way. I hate that 5 years and therapy and meditation and every self-help book written hasn't made me immune to you. Then hate me, Julian said, and his voice was raw and desperate and real. Use me to purge every angry feeling, but please, Maya, please let me try to earn you back. Let me prove this isn't nostalgia or boredom. Let me show you that you've been the only thing that mattered for 5 years. Just let me try. His phone rang. Actually rang, shattering the moment. Julian looked at the screen and all the color drained from his face. He looked up at her, conflict written in every line of his body. I have to take this. I'm sorry. I have to. He walked to the far side of the rooftop, and Maya watched him answer. Watched his entire body go rigid. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see him run a hand through his hair in agitation, could see his jaw clench, could see him pace like a caged animal. When he returned several minutes later, he was visibly shaken. The vulnerability from before locked behind walls again. I have to go, he said, and the word seemed to cause him physical pain. Early meeting tomorrow. I'm sorry, You're lying, Maya said flatly. That wasn't about business. I can't, Julian started, then stopped. His eyes closed briefly. Please trust me. There are things I need to handle, things I will explain, but not tonight. Not like this. The dismissal stung worse than she expected. This was it. History repeating itself. Him pulling away, shutting her out, deciding what she could and couldn't handle. She turned toward the elevator, blinking back tears. Maya, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. Can I see you again? Tomorrow, the day after, every day, however you'll allow it. She should say no, should protect herself, should walk away with her dignity intact. Instead, she turned back and found him watching her with such desperate hope it made her chest ache. Give me one good reason why I should risk my heart again. Julian's answer was simple and devastating. Because I love you. Have loved you every single day since we met. Loved you through the breakup. Loved you through 5 years of silence. Will love you until the day I die. Nothing has changed that. Nothing could. Pretty words aren't enough anymore, Maya said. But her voice was softer now. I'm not the naive 23-year-old girl you left. I've been hurt. I've rebuilt myself. I've learned to protect my heart. Then let me prove it, Julian said, taking a step toward her. Let me show you this is real. An idea formed. Reckless and probably stupid, but she was already here, already invested, already falling. You want me back? Fine. You have 1 month to prove it, but we do it my way. His eyes flashed with interest. Your way? No private jets, no expensive restaurants, no billionaire lifestyle. If you want me, you exist in my world, my Brooklyn apartment, my struggling artist life, my real world. We'll see how long the great Julian Sterling lasts, living like a normal person. Something dark and possessive crossed his face. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. I'll live in a cardboard box if it means being near you. I'll give up every luxury, every comfort. None of it has ever meant anything without you anyway. He caught her hand, turned it over, and pressed a slow, deliberate kiss to her palm. The touch of his lips against her skin sent fire through her veins. You have 1 month to try resisting me, but I already know how this ends. How? Maya breathed, caught in the intensity of his gaze. With you in my arms, in my bed, in my life forever? When I commit to something, I don't lose, and I've never been more committed to anything than winning you back. She pulled her hand away, heart racing. We'll see. Monday morning, she said, backing toward the elevator. 6 a.m. If you're serious, you'll be at my apartment. I'll text you the address. I'll be there, Julian said. I'd cross fire to be there. The elevator doors closed on his face, and Maya slumped against the wall, shaking. As the car descended, she pulled out her phone and looked through the rear window, watching the rooftop through the glass elevator shaft. A sleek black car pulled up. A woman stepped out, elegant, professional, around 45, carrying a medical bag. She approached Julian with obvious concern, touching his arm, speaking urgently. Julian's whole posture changed, becoming almost defeated in a way Maya had never seen. The woman was clearly Dr. Elena Vance. But why did Julian need a doctor? And why did he look so exhausted, so fragile as he talked to her? Worry eclipsed Maya's anger. Something was wrong. Something he wasn't telling her. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of November morning that made summer feel like a dream. Maya woke at 5:30, having barely slept. She'd changed her sheets, cleaned her tiny studio apartment until it gleamed, then felt stupid for caring what Julian thought of her space. This wasn't about impressing him. This was about making him see her real life. The one without penthouses and private cars and unlimited resources. At 5:59, she was pacing, wearing old jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair in a simple ponytail. No makeup. If he wanted her world, he got the real version. At exactly 6 a.m., a knock sounded on her door. She opened it to find Julian, standing in her hallway, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt. She'd never seen him in anything but designer suits. The jeans fit him perfectly. The t-shirt stretched across shoulders that seemed broader than she remembered. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered, and he was holding 2 coffees from her favorite corner shop and a bag of bagels. "How did you know my coffee order?" she asked, taking the cup he offered. "I remember everything about you, Maya. You take it with cream and 2 sugars. You like everything bagels with plain cream cheese. You drink orange juice in the morning, but only if it has pulp. You hate pulp-free. You say it's a crime against citrus. You listen to jazz when you paint and indie when you write music. You hum when you're concentrating. Should I continue?" She stared at him, heart doing something complicated in her chest. "That was 5 years ago." "There are some things you don't forget," he said. Thus began the most surreal month of Maya's life. Julian showed up every morning at 6 a.m. with coffee, learning the new details of her routine, the ways she'd changed, syncing his billion-dollar empire schedule to her struggling artist life. He'd work from her apartment until she left for her shift at the cafe. Then he'd follow. The first time he walked into the Brooklyn cafe where she worked, every head turned. He was too polished, too expensive-looking even in casual clothes, like a panther walking into a room full of house cats. He ordered a black coffee, left a $20 tip that made Maya hiss at him in warning, and settled into the corner booth with his laptop. She watched him throughout her shift. This man who ran a multi-billion-dollar empire, conducting video conferences with Tokyo and London from a cramped booth in Brooklyn while she served tables. He looked up every few minutes to find her. Like he needed to confirm she was still there, still real. On day 3, he carried her art supplies to a pop-up gallery showing in Bushwick, stood quietly in the corner while she set up her pieces, pride radiating from him in waves. When the gallery owner, a pretentious man in his 50s, with a goatee and black turtleneck, cruelly dismissed her work as derivative and uninspired, Maya watched Julian's hands curl into fists. Watched his jaw clench so tight it must have hurt. But he didn't intervene, didn't pull out his wallet or make threats or use his power. He let her handle it herself, watched her defend her art, hold her ground, stand up for herself. Only later in her apartment did he pull her into his arms while she cried angry tears. "He's a fool," Julian said against her hair. "Your work is extraordinary. That piece with the fractured mirrors reflecting different versions of the same face. That's genius. That's pain and beauty and truth all at once." He wouldn't know real art if it hung itself in the Guggenheim. "You're biased," she said, but didn't pull away from his embrace. "Absolutely. I'm completely helplessly biased toward everything you create." By the end of week 1, Julian had taken the subway with her 17 times. She watched this germophobic billionaire stand in crowded cars, clearly uncomfortable, but doing it anyway because it was her world. He'd hold the pole with one hand and her with the other, his body curved protectively around hers when the train got too packed. Week 2 brought small changes she tried not to notice. He started keeping a toothbrush at her apartment, left a charger by her bed, bought groceries without being asked, and learned to cook simple meals in her tiny kitchen. She'd come home from work to find him chopping vegetables, classical music playing from his phone, looking more at peace than she'd ever seen him in any penthouse. They talked for hours late into the night. He asked about her music, remembered every detail she shared, listened to rough cuts of new songs, and gave thoughtful feedback. He supported her dreams without trying to fix everything with money, though she noticed small things: the guitar strings that appeared on her keyboard, the art supplies that restocked themselves, the flyer for a songwriter's workshop with a sticky note in his handwriting that just said, "You should do this." But there were cracks in the facade. Phone calls he'd take in her bathroom coming back tense, moments where he'd zone out, hand unconsciously going to his chest, face going pale. Once she caught him taking pills. "Just vitamins," he said quickly. But she wasn't sure she believed him. 2 weeks in, on a rainy Wednesday night, Maya sat at her keyboard working on a new song. Something raw and vulnerable about second chances and learning to trust again, about walls coming down and letting someone see the scared parts of you. Julian was on her couch, laptop balanced on his knees, supposedly working, but she could feel his eyes on her more often than his screen. When she finished, the last notes hanging in the air, she looked up to find him watching her with tears streaming down his face. "Julian." He set the laptop aside, not bothering to wipe his eyes. "That was—" He stopped, his voice completely wrecked. "That was us. That song. That's what I've been trying to say for 5 years." The air between them went thick with tension, emotional and physical, and unbearable. Maya stood from the keyboard, crossed to where he sat. Every rational thought in her head screamed to stay cautious, stay protected. But her heart had never been good at listening to reason where Julian was concerned. "Stay tonight," she said. "Not on the couch. With me." Julian's control visibly fractured. His eyes went dark. His breathing changed. "Maya, if I stay, I don't trust myself to keep things slow. 5 years of wanting you is a barely leashed storm inside me." She reached out, traced the line of his jaw with her fingers. "Maybe I don't want slow. Maybe I'm tired of slow." Before he could respond, before either of them could close the distance that felt like miles and inches all at once, his phone rang. Julian looked at the screen, and every drop of color drained from his face. The transformation was instant and terrible. The vulnerable man who'd been crying at her music vanished, replaced by the controlled CEO, all walls up. "I have to take this," he said, already standing, already moving away. "It's urgent." He stepped into her tiny bathroom, and even through the door, Maya heard raised voices, his voice tight with stress. Another voice, female, insistent. She caught fragments. "I need more time. She can't know yet. Elena, please just give me until the end of the month." When he emerged 15 minutes later, he was completely shut down. The intimacy of moments ago had evaporated like it never existed. "I have to go," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Early meeting tomorrow." "It's 9 p.m., Maya said. "Julian, what's going on?" "I can't," he started, then stopped. "I'm sorry. I'll see you tomorrow morning." He kissed her forehead, chaste and almost sad, and left. Maya stood in her apartment, confused and hurt, and increasingly certain that Julian was hiding something big, something that might destroy them all over again. She called Cassidy. "I need you to find out everything you can about Julian Sterling. Not the business stuff, the personal stuff, medical records if you can find them, charity work, anything unusual from the past 5 years." Cassidy was quiet for a long moment. You sure you want to go down this road? Some things, once you know them, you can't unknow. I need to know what I'm getting into. Please, Cassidy. I'll see what I can find. 3 days later, Cassidy showed up at Maya's apartment with a folder. Her face was serious, almost sad. You need to sit down for this. Just tell me. Cassidy opened the folder, spreading documents across the coffee table. Public records, charity fundraising initiatives, medical research donations, hospital board appointments, all dated and documented. 3 weeks before Julian ended your relationship 5 years ago, he collapsed during a board meeting. He was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with a genetic heart condition, a faulty valve, degenerative, life-threatening. Maya's world tilted. What? The prognosis was devastating. 2 to 5 years to live without surgery, but the surgery was highly experimental, only a 40% survival rate. Most doctors recommended against it, said he should get his affairs in order. No, Maya whispered. No, he would have told me. Look at the timeline, Cassidy said gently. The breakup happened 1 week after his diagnosis. The room spun. 1 week he'd found out he was dying. And 1 week later, he'd ended things. Not because she wasn't enough. Not because she didn't fit into his world. Because he was dying and didn't want her to watch. There's more, Cassidy continued. For 3 years he ran his company while slowly dying. Made arrangements, set up foundations, prepared for the end. Then 2 years ago, he underwent the surgery. Dr. Elena Vance was his cardiac surgeon. She's now his recovery specialist. He's been in remission and healthy for 2 years. 2 years? He'd been healthy, alive, recovered for 2 years, and never reached out. Why? But wait, Cassidy said. There's something else. These financial records over the past 5 years. You've received a lot of financial help, right? Maya nodded slowly. My student loans got paid off. $47,000. Some anonymous benefactor through the university. And I got that art grant for $30,000. And a mysterious investor bought my entire gallery collection for $15,000 when I was about to give up. And my landlord said someone paid 6 months' rent when I was going to be evicted. All of it traces back to Julian. Shell companies, charitable foundations he established, anonymous trusts. He's been bankrolling your life for 5 years, making sure you were okay, making sure your dreams survived even if he didn't. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't process. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. The anger, the hurt, the abandonment, it all reconfigured into something more complex, more painful, more devastating. She looked at Cassidy. I need to see him right now. It was 9 p.m. when Maya arrived at Julian's penthouse building, the folder clutched in her shaking hands. The doorman tried to stop her, but she pushed past, took the private elevator that required a key, used the emergency override that set off alarms she didn't care about. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, and Maya stepped into a space that made her heart break. It was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. High-end furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Art on the walls that probably cost millions. And it was completely impersonal, like a museum, like a hotel, like a place where no one actually lived, just existed. Julian appeared from another room, clearly having just gotten out of the shower, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. His hair was wet, chest bare, and Maya saw it for the first time. The scar, a long, brutal line down the center of his chest where they'd cracked him open to save his life. Her breath caught. Oh, God. Julian saw where she was looking, and something in his face just crumbled. You know? She threw the folder at him. It hit his chest and papers scattered everywhere. Tell me all of it. No more secrets. No more protection. I want the truth. Julian stood frozen as papers scattered around his bare feet. his chest rising and falling rapidly, that brutal scar a testament to pain she'd never known about. The distance between them felt like the Grand Canyon, and a single breath all at once. "I was diagnosed 3 weeks before I ended things with you," he said, his voice completely stripped of the control she'd grown used to. "Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with severe left ventricular outflow obstruction. Do you want the medical jargon, or do you want the truth?" "They told me the truth," Maya whispered. "My heart was killing me slowly. The valve was faulty, genetic, degenerative. They gave me 2 to 5 years without intervention, with surgery, experimental surgery that had killed more patients than it saved. I had a 40% chance. 40%, Maya. The odds of me dying on that table were higher than the odds of me surviving." She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears already streaming. "You were 23 years old, brilliant and full of life, and so goddamn beautiful it hurt to look at you. We'd been together 6 months, 6 perfect months, where I got to pretend I was normal, that I was just a man falling in love with an extraordinary woman. Then my body decided to remind me that nothing good in my life gets to last." "Julian," she started, but he kept going, words pouring out like a dam had broken. "I had a choice. Tell you I was dying and watch you sacrifice your entire future to play nurse to a man who probably wouldn't see his 35th birthday. Watch you give up art school, give up your music, give up everything you were meant to become so you could sit by a hospital bed and hold my hand while I deteriorated. Or lie. Tell you that you didn't fit into my world, that you were a distraction, make you hate me enough to move on and live the life you deserved." "That wasn't your choice to make," Maya said, her voice breaking. "You didn't get to decide what I could handle." "I know," Julian said, and he looked devastated. "I know that now. But I was terrified and dying, and I couldn't. I couldn't let you waste your beautiful life on someone who had no future. You talked about your dreams constantly, galleries you wanted to show in, songs you wanted to write, places you wanted to see. How could I trap you in my tragedy? So you just left," she said. "Broke my heart and left." Breaking your heart was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than the surgery. Harder than thinking I was going to die because I had to look at you and lie. Had to watch your face when I told you that you didn't matter, that what we had wasn't real. Had to walk away while you cried and not turn back. "The student loans," Maya said, her anger flaring through the grief. "The grants, the mysterious investor, the rent payments. You've been controlling my life for 5 years. Julian flinched. "Not controlling. Never controlling. But you were going to quit art school when we were together. Remember? You told me you couldn't afford it anymore, that you were going to work full-time. I couldn't let that happen. So, yes, I used my money to make sure you got the education you deserved, the opportunities you'd earned. I broke your heart, but I wasn't going to let you break your dreams. Without asking me, without telling me, do you know how that feels? Finding out that every success I've had might have been bought." "No," Julian said sharply, stepping toward her. "No, Maya. I gave you opportunities, but your talent is your own. Your art is your own. Your success is because you're extraordinary, not because of my money. I just made sure financial barriers didn't stop you from showing the world what you could do." "You had the surgery 2 years ago," she said. "And this was the part that hurt most." 2 years, Julian. You've been healthy and alive and in remission for 2 years. Why didn't you come back to me then?" His face crumpled, and for the first time since she'd known him, Julian looked completely broken. "Because I didn't know how. I spent 3 years preparing to die, made peace with never having a future, set up foundations, arranged my affairs, said goodbye to everything I'd ever wanted. When I survived, when I woke up from that surgery and they told me I was going to live, I didn't know how to come back to life." "What does that mean?" "It means I was a coward," Julian said, his voice raw. "It means I'd spent 3 years convincing myself you'd moved on, found someone better, Someone who could give you the normal life I never could. It means I was too ashamed to face you after what I'd done, too broken to hope you'd ever forgive me. The playlist was all I could manage, adding songs every day, hoping somehow you'd feel my love across the distance, knowing it wasn't enough, but unable to do more. Maya was crying openly now, grieving for what he'd gone through alone, angry about the secrets, heartbroken that they'd lost years they could have had. I should have been there for the surgery, for the recovery, for all of it. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, Julian said, because you would have been there, would have put your entire life on hold for me, and I loved you too much to let you do that. Love, she said bitterly. You call that love? Yes, he said simply. Letting you go was the most loving thing I've ever done. It was also the stupidest because I didn't account for the fact that I'd never stop loving you. That 3 years of dying wouldn't kill it. That 2 years of recovery wouldn't heal it. That 5 years of distance wouldn't diminish it. You've been the only thing that mattered every single day. She wanted to hit him and hold him in equal measure. Wanted to scream at him for the lost time and thank him for trying to protect her and curse him for thinking she needed protection. The complexity of it was overwhelming. I need time, she said, to process this. All of it. The hope that had been building in his eyes died. How much time? I don't know, she said honestly. It's too much, Julian. She turned toward the elevator, and his voice stopped her, desperate and wrecked. I have loved you every single day, Maya. Dying didn't stop it. Living hasn't stopped it. Nothing will ever stop it. You've been my first thought every morning and my last thought every night for 5 years. If you need time, take it. Take all the time you need. But please, please know that I'm not going anywhere. Not again. Not ever. Maya didn't turn around. Couldn't. Because if she looked at him, broken and bare and scarred in the middle of that cold penthouse, she'd crumble. The elevator doors closed on his devastation and hers. She spent 3 days in her apartment, blinds closed, phone on silent, alternating between crying, rage, and listening to the playlist on repeat. Every song took on new meaning now. They weren't just regret. They were goodbye songs, love songs from a man who thought he'd never see her again. The weight of his suffering, the 3 years he'd spent preparing to die while still thinking of her, adding songs like prayers, it crashed over her in waves. Cassidy came and went, bringing food. Maya didn't eat, sitting in silence because there were no words for this kind of pain. On the 4th day, Maya finally spoke. He went through surgery alone. Cassidy nodded. Yeah, he did. Recovered alone. Has been living in that empty penthouse, too broken to reach out, too scared to hope. Also true. I've been so angry about being abandoned that I never considered what it cost him to leave. He lied to you, took away your choice. Those are real hurts, Maya. But so is what he went through. Both things can be true. Maya looked at her friend. I still love him after everything. I still love him. I know, baby. I know. Cassidy made calls, talked to Julian's assistant, and reported back. He's gone to his estate in the Catskills, the place he goes when the world becomes too much. He's been there since you left? Maya made a decision. She borrowed Cassidy's car and drove north, watching the city give way to trees, to mountains, to snow that had started falling in soft, fat flakes that blanketed the world in quiet. The estate was massive, a modern glass and stone structure that somehow felt abandoned despite its beauty. She found Julian on the back terrace, overlooking a frozen lake, wearing just a black sweater despite the cold, staring at nothing. You're going to freeze to death, she called out. After all that medical intervention, it would be a terrible waste. Julian turned, and the hope and fear and desperate longing on his face nearly broke her. He whispered her name like a prayer, like he couldn't believe she was real. Maya walked toward him slowly, snow crunching under her boots. "You're an idiot. A noble, self-sacrificing, infuriating idiot. You should have told me. Should have let me love you through it. Should have trusted me with the truth." "I know," Julian said. "Maya, I know. I'm sorry. Stop," she interrupted. "I understand why you did it. I hate it. I hate that you made that choice alone. I hate that we lost 5 years. I hate that you went through surgery and recovery without anyone holding your hand. But I understand." His breath caught. "Does that mean—" "It means if we move forward. And that's an if. You don't get to make those choices for me anymore. No more secrets. No more protecting me from hard things. We're partners, or we're nothing." "Partners," Julian repeated. Like the word was sacred. "Yes, anything. Whatever you need." "Even secrets about how desperately you love me?" Maya asked, and there was the smallest hint of softness in her voice. Julian's answering smile was tentative. "Especially those. I have so many of those secrets, Maya. Do you want to know how many nights I've fallen asleep listening to recordings of your voice? How I've kept every photo, every video, every scrap of our time together?" "You kept recordings?" He looked almost ashamed. "Voice memos, videos, a dying man's desperate attempt to hold on to the only heaven he'd ever known." "Show me," she said. They went inside, and Julian led her to his study, a room that was somehow less impersonal than the rest of the house. He pulled up files on his laptop, hands shaking slightly. Videos of them together from 5 years ago, selfies she'd forgotten about, a recording of her singing in his apartment, her voice young and unpolished, but full of joy. He'd maintained a digital archive of their entire relationship. But then he showed her something else, and her breath caught. A folder labeled After. Inside were photos of her he'd taken from a distance over the past 5 years. Her at art shows laughing with Cassidy, performing at open mics, head thrown back in song, walking through Brooklyn, coffee in hand, lost in thought, candid shots that showed he'd been unable to completely stay away. "You've been following me," she said. But there was no accusation in it. Just wonder. "I couldn't help it," Julian admitted. "I needed to see that you were okay, that you were happy, even if I couldn't be the one making you happy. I know it borders on obsession. I know it's probably not healthy, but I couldn't let you go completely. Couldn't exist in a world where I didn't know if you were safe." "I wasn't happy," Maya said, her voice breaking. "I wasn't okay. I haven't been since the day you left." The confession hung between them, raw and honest and real. "Have you ever loved someone so much that letting them go felt like the only way to save them?" Julian reached for her face, then hesitated, asking permission with his eyes. "Tell me I haven't completely destroyed any chance we had. Tell me there's something left to salvage." Maya's answer was to close the distance between them and kiss him. The kiss was 5 years of longing, desperation, love, and need compressed into a single moment. Julian responded like a drowning man finding air, his hands cradling her face like she was precious, like she might disappear. The kiss deepened, hungry, almost desperate, both of them trying to say everything words couldn't convey. "I love you," Maya gasped between kisses. "I've loved you this whole time. I tried not to, tried to move on, but you're in my blood, Julian. You're in every song I write and every piece I create and every breath I take." "Thank God," Julian breathed against her mouth. "Thank God, because I've been yours for 5 years, completely and utterly yours. And if you'd walked away, I don't know how I would have survived it." He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, let him carry her through the house to his bedroom. What followed was intensely emotional and overwhelming, a reclaiming of each other, of lost time, of their future. Julian laid her on his bed like she was something sacred. "I need to see you," he said, his voice rough. "All of you. It's been 5 years and I've dreamed about this, about you every single night." Maya sat up, held his eyes as she pulled her sweater over her head. Then she watched him watch her, seeing the reverence in his gaze. When she was bare before him, she expected to feel vulnerable. Instead, she felt powerful. "Your turn," she whispered. Julian pulled his sweater off, and she saw the scar fully for the first time, long and brutal down the center of his chest, proof of how close she'd come to losing him forever. She reached out, traced it with trembling fingers. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore, not physically." He caught her hand, pressed it flat against his chest where his heart thundered. "This hurt. 5 years of this heart beating without you. That was the real pain." Then he was lowering her back to the bed, his body covering hers, skin to skin, and it felt like coming home. Every touch was reverent, worshipful. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing it, like he needed to confirm she was real. His mouth followed the path of his hands, kissing her shoulders, her collarbone, her breasts, taking his time, savoring. "Julian," she gasped, arching into him. "Please tell me what you need," he murmured against her skin. "Anything? Everything. I'll give you anything." "You," she said simply. "I just need you." When he finally slid inside her, they both went still, overwhelmed by the intensity of the connection. Julian's forehead dropped to hers, his breathing ragged. "I've missed you," he said, and his voice was wrecked. "God, Maya, I've missed you so much." They moved together slowly at first, relearning each other, but the 5 years of longing couldn't be contained. The pace increased, became desperate, almost frantic. Julian's hands gripped her hips hard enough to leave marks, and she wanted them, wanted proof tomorrow that this was real. "Look at me," he demanded. And when her eyes met his, the intensity there stole her breath. "I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. You're mine, and I'm yours, and nothing is ever going to separate us again." "Yes," she gasped, feeling herself climbing towards something inevitable. "Yes, my love. Yes." When she shattered, he followed immediately, her name a broken prayer on his lips. They collapsed together, tangled and gasping and whole for the first time in 5 years. Later, wrapped in his sheets, Julian traced patterns on her bare skin. His voice was quiet but fierce when he spoke. "I'm never letting you go again. I'll fight anything. My family, fate, the universe itself. You're mine and I'm yours, and that's forever." Maya propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "Promise me something. Anything. If you're ever scared or sick or struggling, you tell me. No more protecting me from hard things. We face everything together." "I promise," Julian said, and sealed it with a kiss that tasted like forever. But even as Maya drifted to sleep, safe in his arms for the first time in 5 years, Julian's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached for it carefully, trying not to wake her. A text from his father, Alistair Sterling. "The board knows about her. Emergency meeting Monday. End this or face the consequences." Julian silenced the phone, deleted the message, and pulled Maya closer, his jaw clenched with determination. Let them try. Monday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. Julian told Maya about the board meeting over coffee in bed, his fingers tangled in her hair. "Your father wants to meet me?" Maya asked. "Wants to intimidate you into leaving?" "Actually, the board thinks you're a distraction, a liability, not suitable for the Sterling image." "And what do you think?" I think they can all go to hell, Julian said calmly. But I also think you should come with me. Let them say what they need to say. Then I'll say what I need to say, which is that they can accept you or lose me. And since I own 51% of Sterling Nexus and am the primary reason the company is worth $8 billion, I'm fairly confident which choice they'll make. Maya grinned despite her nerves. Confident, are we? When it comes to you, absolutely. The boardroom at Sterling Nexus was everything Maya expected. All glass and steel and power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. A massive table that probably cost more than her yearly salary. The board members were exactly as she'd imagined. Two older white men in expensive suits looking at her like she was something stuck to their shoe. And then there was Alistair Sterling. He was an older, colder version of Julian. Same gray eyes, but without any warmth. Same height, but harder, sharper. He looked at Maya like she was a problem to be solved. Miss Thorne, Alistair said, not bothering with pleasantries. I'll be direct. My son has responsibilities to this company, to the Sterling legacy. This relationship is inappropriate and needs to end. Inappropriate how? Maya asked calmly, even though her heart was racing. One of the other board members, a man with silver hair and a condescending smile, leaned forward. Miss Thorne, you're a struggling artist with no significant income or assets. The optics of our CEO dating someone of your, shall we say, economic status, raises questions about motivations. You think I'm after his money? Maya said flatly. Are you not? No, she said simply. I didn't even know Julian was sick. Didn't know about the surgery or the recovery. Certainly didn't know he'd been secretly funding my education. So, if I was a gold digger, I was remarkably terrible at it. Another board member chimed in. Regardless of motivations, Julian needs to consider a more suitable match. We've been discussing a potential merger with Hartley Technologies. Their daughter Victoria would be an appropriate partner. Similar backgrounds, aligned interests. You mean similar bank accounts? Maya said. Julian, who had been sitting silently, his hand resting on Maya's knee under the table in a gesture of support, finally spoke. Are you finished? Son, Alistair started, but Julian stood slowly, every inch of him radiating controlled fury. I am not your son right now. Right now, I'm the CEO of this company and the majority shareholder, so I'd suggest you listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. The room went deathly silent. For 5 years, I did what you wanted. Ran this company, made you billions, expanded into 6 new markets, increased revenue by 300%. I did all of that while dying, by the way, while my heart was literally killing me. And through all of it, I pushed away the only woman I've ever loved because I thought I was protecting her from moments exactly like this. From your judgment, your cruelty, your small-minded obsession with image and legacy. Julian's voice was deadly calm, but Maya could feel him shaking with suppressed rage. Maya isn't a distraction. She's my reason for everything. She's brilliant and talented and the strongest person I've ever met. She survived and thrived without my money, built a life and a career on pure talent and determination. She's everything I've ever wanted and more than I deserve. He turned to face his father directly. You want to talk about appropriate? You abandoned Mother when she got sick because it was inconvenient for your image. You've been married 4 times to women who fit your ideal of suitable and been miserable in every single one. You've built an empire, but you've never built a life. So, forgive me if I don't take relationship advice from you. Julian turned to address the full board. Here's what's going to happen. Maya is part of my life permanently. If the board has a problem with that, you're welcome to leave. I own 51% of this company. I am Sterling Nexus, and I'm done apologizing for choosing happiness over your outdated ideas of propriety. Alistair stood, face red with fury. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting 5 years to stand up to you, Julian said. Now, if you'll excuse us. He took Maya's hand and walked out of the boardroom without looking back. In the elevator, Maya saw how much that had cost him. He was shaking, the adrenaline and emotion catching up. She pulled him into her arms. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "That was brave. I should have done it 5 years ago," Julian said against her hair. "Should have chosen you over everything else. You're choosing me now. That's what matters." As they left the building, Maya caught sight of Alistair standing by the windows, watching them go. For just a moment, their eyes met. Then Alistair did something unexpected. He nodded once, barely perceptible. Not approval exactly, but acknowledgement. Then he turned away. 3 days later, Julian asked Maya to meet him at Bethesda Fountain in Central Park. It was a Saturday afternoon, one of those perfect November days where the sun was bright and the air was crisp, and the leaves were still clinging to gold. She arrived to find a crowd gathered and her heart started racing. A stage had been set up. A full orchestra was assembling, tuning instruments. What was happening? Then she saw Julian step onto the stage, microphone in hand, and her world tilted. This was his nightmare. Public attention, emotional vulnerability, the exact opposite of his reclusive nature. But he was doing it anyway. "Excuse me, everyone." Julian's voice boomed through the speakers. "Can I have your attention, please?" The crowd quieted, phones already coming out to record. "My name is Julian Sterling, and 5 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I let fear and pride take the most important person from me. I've spent every day since trying to find my way back to her." Maya's hands flew to her mouth. "Her name is Maya Thorne, and she's standing right there." Julian pointed directly at her, and hundreds of heads turned. "She's a brilliant artist and musician who deserves the world's recognition. She's been fighting for her dreams while I hid in penthouses and boardrooms. She's the bravest person I know, and she's given me a second chance I definitely don't deserve." The orchestra began to play, and Maya recognized the opening notes. Their jazz song, the one with the skip. Then another song layered in and another. A medley of songs from their playlist, orchestrated and beautiful and playing in Central Park for hundreds of strangers. Julian stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. The crowd parted like water. He dropped to one knee right there on the pathway in front of hundreds of phones, recording what would be viral by evening. Maya couldn't breathe. "I'm done being afraid," Julian said, pulling out a small velvet box. "Done hiding? Done wasting time? I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy, writing songs with you, building dreams together." He opened the box to reveal a ring that made her gasp, a vintage setting with a black diamond because she'd never been traditional, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light. "Maya Thorne, will you marry me?" The crowd held its collective breath. Phones recorded. The orchestra swelled. "You're insane," Maya said, tears streaming down her face. "This is crazy. We've only been back together for weeks." 5 years and 3 weeks, Julian corrected. "I never stopped being yours. This isn't sudden, it's 5 years overdue. So please, please say yes." How could anyone say no to a love like this? How could she walk away from a man who'd loved her through dying, through recovery, through 5 years of distance, who'd stood up to his family, who'd gotten on his knees in front of the world, who'd orchestrated an entire proposal in Central Park despite hating public attention? "Yes," she said, and then louder so everyone could hear. "Yes, Julian, yes." The crowd erupted in cheers. Julian stood, slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly because, of course, he'd found a way to know her size. Then he lifted her off her feet and kissed her while the orchestra swelled, and the city watched, and phones recorded their moment for the world to see. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and laughing, they were surrounded by strangers congratulating them. But Maya caught sight of someone standing at a distance, Alistair Sterling, watching with an unreadable expression. She tensed, expecting confrontation, but then Alistair nodded, the same small acknowledgement from before, and turned to leave. Some of the tension in Julian's shoulders released. Maybe eventually there could be peace. The wedding happened 3 months later on a private beach in the Hamptons. Intimate, just close friends, and the family members who mattered. Cassidy stood as maid of honor, tears streaming down her face from the moment the ceremony started. Maya wore a simple white dress, backless and elegant, her natural hair crowned with fresh flowers. Julian wore a charcoal suit and cried openly when she walked down the makeshift aisle, completely undone by the sight of her. The ceremony was simple, heartfelt, perfect. When it came time for vows, Julian pulled out a piece of paper covered in his handwriting. Maya, every song I added to our playlist was a promise that I'd love you forever, that I'd find my way back to you, that you were worth fighting for. Today, I'm keeping those promises. I promise to face every hard thing with you, to never make decisions alone again, to love you in sickness and health, for real this time. I promise to support your dreams, to listen to every song you write, to stand in galleries and watch you shine. I promise to be your partner in everything, and I promise that 5 years from now, 10 years, 50 years, I'll still be adding songs to our playlist, still finding new ways to tell you that you're my everything. Maya's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. Julian, you've been my greatest pain and my greatest love. You've taught me that sometimes the bravest thing is letting someone in, even when you're scared, even when it might hurt. I promise to never let you suffer alone again, to hold your hand through every surgery, every fear, every hard day. I promise to face the world together, to build a life that's ours, not what anyone else expects. And I promise that every song I write for the rest of my life will have pieces of you in it, because you're woven into everything I create. When the officiant pronounced them married, Julian kissed her like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, like she was air and he'd been holding his breath for 5 years. The reception was filled with music and laughter. At one point, Maya saw Julian talking to Alistair in a corner. The conversation looked tense, but ended with an awkward handshake. Progress. 6 months after the wedding, the Maya Thorne Gallery opened in Chelsea. A bright modern space funded by a joint foundation she and Julian had established for struggling artists. The opening was packed, her work finally getting the recognition it deserved. Pieces sold within the first hour. Gallery owners who'd rejected her before suddenly wanted meetings. Julian stood in the back watching her shine, pride radiating from him in waves. Alistair was there too, still stiff, still formal, but present. He stopped in front of one of Maya's pieces, a large canvas showing a heart fractured, but held together with gold thread. Kintsugi, Alistair said, the Japanese art of repairing broken things with gold. Making the brokenness part of the beauty, Maya agreed, not hiding the cracks but highlighting them. Alistair looked at her for a long moment. You're good for him. I didn't want to see it, but you are. He's more himself with you than I've ever seen him. It was the closest thing to approval she'd ever get, and she'd take it. 9 months into their marriage, Julian and Maya were in a professional recording studio, working on a collaborative project. They'd partnered with Sterling Nexus's new division, using technology Julian's company had developed to support emerging artists. Okay, your turn, Maya said, laughing. Sing the bridge. I can't sing, Julian protested. That's never stopped you in the shower. Come on, Billionaire. Show me what you've got. Julian's singing voice was terrible, completely off-key. But he tried anyway because she'd asked. The recording engineer was trying not to laugh. Maya was doubled over, tears streaming down her face from laughing so hard. "You're fired from this project," she gasped. "You can't fire me, I'm funding it," Julian said, pulling her into his arms and kissing her neck until she squealed. The video of their studio session, Julian's terrible singing and Maya's delighted laughter, went viral. People loved seeing the normally serious CEO being playful, being human, being desperately in love. 1 year after their wedding, they moved into a new apartment. Not the penthouse, not Maya's tiny studio, but something they'd chosen together. A loft in Tribeca with high ceilings perfect for her art, space for his books, room for her keyboard and his vintage record player. The walls were covered with her paintings. His collection of rare vinyl records lined shelves she designed. It was a perfect blend of both their worlds. On their first anniversary, they lay on their couch together, her head in his lap, his fingers gently playing with her hair. The playlist, now renamed from For When You Miss Me to simply Hours, played softly in the background. It had 2,473 songs. Now Julian added a new song, a ballad about forever love. The description read, "Every day with you, my love. Jay." Maya smiled, picked up her phone, and added her own song, a romantic acoustic track. Her description said, "Not long enough. Need forever and then some. M." They kissed slow and sweet and full of promise, tasting like home and future, and everything good. Later that night, as Julian slept beside her, Maya's hand rested on her still flat stomach, a small secret smile on her face. She'd taken the test that morning. They were going to have a baby. She'd tell him tomorrow, would watch his face light up with wonder and joy, would start a new chapter of their story. But tonight, she just listened to their playlist and felt grateful for second chances, for love that survived death and distance, for a man who'd added 1,025 songs and then kept adding them long after, who'd fought his way back to her, who'd chosen her over everything else. The playlist continued playing, a soundtrack to their life, proof that some love stories don't end. They just pause, waiting for the right moment to begin again. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth every song, every sacrifice, every second chance. Maya and Julian had found their way back to each other against impossible odds, had built a life from the broken pieces of their past, had turned their pain into something beautiful. And it all started with a rainy Thursday night, a forgotten playlist, and a song added at 3:47 in the morning by a man who'd never stopped loving the woman who got away. Until she didn't get away anymore. Until she came back. Until their story, interrupted by fear and illness and terrible timing, finally got the ending it deserved. Not an ending, really, just a new beginning with a soundtrack that would last forever. The end. A deep moral lesson and life skill. The courage of radical honesty. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever believed in second chances or the power of love that refuses to give up, please subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight for what matters, that some connections transcend time and distance, that real love is worth every risk. The moral of the story. Julian believed that by leaving Maya and lying about his reasons, he was performing the ultimate act of sacrifice. However, the story teaches us a harsh but necessary lesson. Protection without consent is actually control. When you withhold the truth from someone to save them from pain, you are also robbing them of their agency and their right to decide how they want to live their life. True love is not about shielding someone from the storm. It is about trusting them enough to weather the storm together. Julian's silence didn't stop the pain. It only added 5 years of confusion and abandonment to the burden Maya was already carrying. The life skill. Navigating vulnerability. The most important life skill we can learn from Maya and Julian is the ability to be vulnerable when the stakes are highest. In our lives, we often build walls like Julian did, using wealth, status, or emotional distance to keep ourselves from getting hurt or from hurting others. But these walls eventually become our own prisons. To live a truly fulfilling life. 1. Stop making choices for others. Give the people you love the dignity of knowing the truth. Let them decide if they are strong enough to handle it. 2. Recognize that healing is not a solo journey. Julian tried to heal alone and failed for 3 years. He only truly began to live again when he reconnected with Maya. 3. Use your playlist. We all have ways we communicate when words fail. Find your medium, whether it's music, art, or small gestures, and use it to keep the bridge open, even when you're afraid to cross it. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you forgive someone who left you, even if they did it to protect you? I'll be reading every comment. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in my next story.